Hey guys, it's me. I'm back. So I had a friend reach out to me today for some advice, and after talking to her, I was like, I'm gonna make a video about that. And I love my friends because most of them are okay with it, and not that I like name their names or anything anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to preface this by saying though, like the only reason I was able to give her the more specific advice that I gave her is because I do know a lot about her life already. I think if someone random had reached out to me with this question, I would have needed like a lot more questions answered. I would have needed a lot more context. So I knew very much that these were things that applied to her because she's been my friend for a while. I know a lot about her relationship. And so it wasn't even a question for me that these were probably like very strong possibilities for her. She and I are very similar in our dating history and our sex trauma history. And we're just very similar in how we kind of like handle things within the context of relationships. And she did tell me, she was like, this feels like you're hitting the nail right on the head. But yeah, I just am going to kind of reiterate the things that I said to her to you guys on camera. So here we go. So she reached out to me today freaking out. And she was like, Erin, I've never been attracted to another guy while being with my boyfriend. And last night that happened and it totally freaked me out. I feel awful about it and I don't know what it means. Does this mean that I'm not in love with my boyfriend? Does it mean we aren't supposed to be together? Do I just fight these feelings? Are they wrong? Are they even there? I've never been drawn to someone. It was like a fire hose, which is totally how I think too. I'm just like, welcome to my mind. She was just like, I kind of felt like some crazy energy or something from the other guy, and it scared me because I want to never feel that way with other people when I'm with my person. And right off the bat, I totally related to what she was talking about. One of the things I wanted to touch on first, just about this in general, is that cheating happens for a lot of different reasons, but cheating thoughts, I think, are a whole different category of issue. I know there are people out there who might say, like, you shouldn't even be having cheating thoughts at all. I personally don't agree with that because just like cheating happens for a bunch of different reasons, cheating thoughts happen for a bunch of different reasons. And I don't think they can all be lumped into the same category. And I also think it's completely unrealistic to act like we can control the thoughts that we have. Try and tell that to an addict, dude. Do you know how many addicts, including myself, had to work through a period of our recovery where we were still craving, we were still having relapse thoughts, and we had to learn different tools and skills for how to handle those thoughts, because a relapsed thought doesn't mean that you've already relapsed. I think the same tools that go for addiction thoughts and relapse thoughts can absolutely be used in this category too. So that was the first thing I just wanted to kind of say up front, right out the gate, is I'm not here to stigmatize that. I'm not here to shame that. And I don't think there's any point in doing that. I don't think it does any good. And I actually think it's counterproductive. We have to learn, we have to be able to make mistakes in order to grow. And if someone actually cares about learning from their mistakes and trying to grow, then you're already on the right path. You might not be exactly where you want to be, but you're on the right path. I personally feel like it's important to ask questions about why things are happening, and that's what we're going to do in this video today. I think learning how to have more curiosity about yourself and other people never can do anything except benefit you. You might not always get the answers that you want. You might not always find out things that are super great to hear, but I think we sometimes have lost the art of curiosity about each other and ourselves, because there's so many rules nowadays about how we're all supposed to act and we're supposed to be. And I would like to bring some of that curiosity back in this video today. I just kind of wanted to say all of that beforehand, that I think there's a lot of people who have thoughts and don't know what to do with them. And because they stay bottled, because they stay internalized, the only person that we're getting feedback from about those thoughts is ourselves. And I feel like I've said this in other videos on my channel, but confession of the soul is very healing and very helpful for a lot of different reasons. But obviously one of the biggest reasons is just that you're able to hear another person's perspective other than just your own. Because for me, if I do start having those thoughts, I immediately start shaming myself. I immediately start putting myself down. I really just kind of start freaking out. I almost start freaking out as if the event has already happened when it hasn't. My brain jumps 10 steps ahead to this very like horrible apocalyptic situation where I've already cheated, the deed's already been done, the relationship's ruined, everything's in shambles, I'm a horrible person, they're about to leave me, and that hasn't happened. It hasn't happened yet. And that's important that I or whomever, you get credit for that. You get credit for the fact that that hasn't happened yet. So my feedback for her was really kind of three different things. The first thing that my mind first went to, which I think played into why she was having the thoughts at all in general, and absolutely played into why I would have cheating thoughts. It wasn't the whole thing, but it was a contributing factor. And I think this might be true maybe for quite a few people on my channel, is limerence. I would say if I had to define limerence, it's almost like a survival coping mechanism. A lot of times this develops in your childhood when you feel very unsupported by the people who are supposed to be making you feel safe as your caretakers. And so out of a survival need to feel safe, because that's what kids need when they're younger, your brain, as a very intelligent mechanism and muscle, creates this way of coping by helping you feel hyper attached to other adults around you so that you can convince yourself that you actually are safe, and that your survival essentially isn't threatened, that your basic needs could be met and are being met. Even when it comes to like affection and things like that, that's something that a child still very much needs. And so I think another huge part of limerence is you received almost no real attention from someone, or scraps of attention, not even in an abusive way. It's like, let's say it's a new person and they've only just given you little bits of attention and affirmation because they literally just met you. Your brain takes those scraps and constructs a whole giant story out of it so that you feel way more attached to them than a normal person would, because there's already kind of this fantasy and this story being built in your head. And the other thing I would say about limerence that's very important for people to understand it is not based off of experiences. It is based off of feelings. If it was actually based off of experiences, that's just called getting to know someone, I think. That's the realistic, grounded version of just getting to know someone and getting to actually enjoy them based on real things that have happened. Fantasy-based attachment, which is really what limerence is, it's a fantasy-based attachment, is based on feelings and what fantasies those feelings elicit. So whenever I hear, my friends talking about how a feeling made them react in a certain strong kind of way towards a person, I'm not saying I automatically think limerence, but it's just interesting to catch on to that and to be like, it's not really a reality-based thing when it's more based in feelings. If you're interested in learning more about limerence, and if you haven't really heard about it that much, I'm also going to include a video down below. I'll actually include 2 videos of people who summarize it really, really well. And so when my friend first sent me this text, that was the first thing that my mind thought of. She is very unhappy in her current relationship for a lot of very valid reasons. So she meets a guy in a bar and he gives her a bunch of feelings, and her limerence just latches onto that, in a very sort of like desperate way, out of almost like a scarcity mentality. Her limerence says, yeah, this could be my new daydream where everything works out and the movie comes true and I get my honeymoon, blah, 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 whatever thing that I've been wishing for in my head. The other thing that I kind of forgot to kind of touch on here that I was talking with my friend about is just that it makes sense why her mind did this. If limerence is kind of your go-to fantasy coping mechanism, and it's a mental habit that you're working on but haven't fully gotten rid of yet for yourself, and then you're unhappy in your relationship, and your relationship's not providing you with this fantasy type feeling, it's providing you hardship and difficulty, not even the type of difficulty that means you should leave or break up, but just sometimes relationships are just hard and difficult. If your mind naturally creates fantasy-based connections with people, and you're experiencing hardship in your current relationship, and then you meet a stranger in a bar, that's like a freaking drug right there and readily available for your brain. And it makes sense why that is a temptation, because it feels real. It feels like you really know them. It feels like there is a real potential for a real fantasy to actually come true, because you're still struggling with not believing in limerence. Some people don't even know that they struggle with limerence. So if you're not even aware of it, if it isn't even something that you've started working on, it's going to be a huge problem and a huge temptation, a huge mental temptation. That was one of the main things that I kept trying to kind of like remind her of initially in the conversation, is I was like, you really need to remember that you don't know this guy. You never fully know anyone for 2 to 3 months, which I say all the time in my videos, but we forget very easily, especially when something like this happens where you had a really great conversation and whatever sort of facts got overshared between you, and then suddenly you feel like you know them, you know? If you're not in the mental habit of checking yourself, if you don't sort of have that check and balance really built in yet, for you to start feeling temptation for this limerence story, and then having a go-to of being like, no, I don't know them. You know, if that's not set up, it's going to be even harder to overcome that feeling of, wow, look at this thing that I'm missing out on. Because that really is what it starts to feel like. It feels like there's this whole beautiful thing over here that you're missing out on because you don't know them yet. And you know the reason you know that you don't know them yet? Because you haven't had fights. You haven't found out all the ways that you're not actually that compatible. And I'm sure there are a bunch. It doesn't mean you wouldn't be great dating each other, but you're not going to be like 100% perfect. It's not the kids' movies that we grew up on, you know? So that was something I forgot to include in this that I just wanted to throw in here really quick. When you really think about it, and when you really think about limerence as a coping mechanism, it makes 1,000% sense why your brain would do this if you're already unhappy in your current relationship and you smell a new fantasy across the room, and you have difficulty not believing that that fantasy could actually be a real thing that worked out. And so kind of just really helping yourself reground to say, okay, I was starting to really freak out about this. I was starting to really just like, I don't want to say take my thoughts seriously, like we should never take our thoughts seriously. But I feel like in this country sometimes we're really not educated enough on how much we really can shrug and laugh at our own thoughts. Like, there's so many opportunities for us to just not take our own mind, that seriously. The other thing that I said to my friend, and this was a more recent realization that I've had, but it was a really important one for me. And I didn't realize this from any video or anything like that. It's just something that's recently just kind of, I think God's just been showing it to me. When I have new understandings for things where I'm like, I have no idea where that came from, I very much think that that comes from God. And I consider that a blessing, and I'm grateful for that, you know, we don't even know where thoughts are stored in the body. We don't even know how realizations like actually occur. They can theorize, but we don't know where thoughts are stored. We don't know where we download crap into our head and keep it. So I don't think it's so crazy of a theory that there could be a spiritual aspect to the thoughts that we receive and the thoughts that we have and the conclusions that we're able to reach. Just my opinion that I'll throw in there. But the thing that I said to her was just that there's kind of 3 parts to how I came to realize this. The first place that it started was that I realized a few months ago, when I'm really craving snack foods, like I'll just find myself really craving chips or just unhealthy stuff. I realized recently that I'm actually just hungry. And I know that sounds really stupid and really sad, but I had never connected that before. Like, all I would pay attention to was the craving and what I was craving, which was the chips or the junk food. And that's all I would pay attention to. I really want junk food right now. I need to find junk food. I really am craving chips. I need to find chips. I didn't think about it any deeper than that. There was no reason to. And I don't remember what caused me to realize, but I was just like, oh, I'm just hungry. Like, I'm literally just hungry for food. And because I'm hungry, my mind isn't used to eating like whole meals and nutritious things. So its only go-to idea to give me for sustenance is crap, because I have a history of just eating like crap and not taking care of myself. And And that was very insightful for me. The main thing that I realized is that I didn't have any skills in properly identifying my needs correctly. I think it's for several different reasons. I think it's because I've typically put people before myself and put myself last. I've neglected myself a lot, obviously. And I just really have not taken the time to even think about my basic needs, think about what my basic needs might be, or even how to recognize the sign of a basic need showing up. I think that last point is really the most important one. I didn't know how to recognize the sign of a basic need. I just knew how to take whatever kind of craving at face value, and that's what I wanted. So that's what I was going to go chase. So that was the first thing I realized a couple months ago. Then more recently, I think it was like last week or something, I was laying in bed and I was really craving a person who's not healthy for me. And I hadn't been craving this person for a while, and so it was almost like interesting to me that I even was craving them at all. And I was able to play the tape out. It wasn't even a strong craving. It wasn't something where I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have an impulse control issue from this craving. My reality didn't feel threatened by it or anything like that. And I've gotten very good at playing the tape out and telling myself, like, what happens if you act on that action, and once I see that, I lose motivation a lot to even do it. But I was sitting there thinking about it, and I was like, dang, this craving feels very similar to the food cravings. And I just never really connected that before. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even think I'm actually craving this person. I think I'm actually just craving love. Like, I think I'm just craving a relationship and intimacy, but they're the closest version to that I've ever had. So my brain is giving me this idea of something that I should reach towards and try to grasp at, because that's the closest example I have to it, just like with the food. But really, I'm just craving closeness and intimacy and love. And that was like mind-blowing to me, to be like, holy crap, this shows up a lot of different places, not just food. Like, there are a lot of areas in my life where I don't know how to recognize the signs of a basic need. And not just that, but there's kind of like been obviously this breakdown of communication between my mind and my body, because I haven't really let them talk to each other for a really long time. So because there's been a breakdown in that communication, my body has learned that if it's going to get these basic needs met, it needs to almost like send me high dopamine level examples to get that basic need met. Because if it sends me low dopamine examples, I'm not going to be interested in them, and I'm not going to take it up on that. I really feel like that's what I realized. And it was reality shattering to me. I was just like, wow. And I think the reason why I was able to see that is because I have started eating healthier. I have started taking care of my body. I am eating 3 whole meals a day. And with the food, I did a bad job explaining this in the first take, so I'm like redoing it. But the reason I was finally able to realize it with the food, I think, is because throughout a lot of my life, I've never really let myself feel full. And it's not because of an eating disorder, it's because I have had a lot of GI issues throughout my life, and I think it's just also my body just has not been a priority to me. Eventually I'm going to make a whole freaking video on my body and how I've treated my body and why I've treated my body the way that I have, and just like our relationship with our body is a whole freaking thing that I am going to make a video about. But regardless of that and the many neurotic ways I've examined it already, yes, I hadn't really, it's not that I never felt full. Like if I went out to eat with people, I would eat a meal and I would feel full. But I think just on my own, before I really started taking care of myself recently, I didn't really just fill myself up on my own. And now that I have started doing that, now that I have started eating healthier, more rich meals, I think that added to why I was able to connect the dots and figure it out, because I recognized that I was hungry, and I also recognized that I wasn't actually eating anything that was going to make me feel full. It was all very like light stuff that doesn't do anything for filling up your stomach. And I think the reason I was able to realize it wasn't going to fill me up is because I have been filling my stomach up and I have been eating enough. And I think that's how I was able to connect the dot, because I've given myself positive examples. I was able to realize how this food that I normally turn to actually was not going to give me the healthy, satisfying result that I was actually needing. But yeah, that was crazy. And so I gave her those 2 examples, but the third thing that I told her is, I was like, I actually think what you're texting me right now is a third example of that. And here's why. I was like, I really think you should pay attention to this. I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? And you don't know what it is, but it might be more than limerence. Or it might be that the limerence is showing up and the limerence craving is showing up for a certain reason. And it might be a similar reason to the food thing and the thing with craving the men that we crave. And it might be because, once again, yes, you got a whiff of a guy who felt like something your mind craved, but maybe once again, this is your body just asking for love that you're not receiving. And it caught a whiff of love in a different area, somewhere else in the room, and it started wanting to reach towards that. So I was like, it's really for you to figure out. But the great thing about this is that you get that nothing bad has happened yet. And you get to actually take the time to try to figure this out. So just think about it. Listen to your thoughts. I've been trying to tell her to journal for like forever now. For me, I made that video on plumb lines, and the tool that I use to kind of slow my mind down and collect data, because I forget things so easily. And it's helped me a lot. So I was trying to tell her, like, you really need to journal too. And there's actually a clip that I'm going to put in here right now from another interview that I watched, which this guy, he's like, hold on, let me find it. So this guy was interviewed by Lisa Bilyeu. I don't know how to say her name. But anyway, she's got a really large following on YouTube, and this guy's like a CIA spy or something like that. I got suggested this video, and most of it was like pretty generic. But there was this one statistic that he listed with the mind and how long the mind actually even like holds on to data before it just kind of like throws it away. And I was like shocked. And he literally said that journaling helps this not happen as much, because the mind really does not want to keep a lot of information. So I'm going to put this clip in here really quick just so you can watch it and see, because we should all be journaling more for real.
How do you reinforce that then? Because I love it. I think it's so strong. But you do end up in that moment, if you're not used to it or practice, just reverting back to the means.
Right. And you nailed it on the head right there. You have to practice. So there are certain tools that are very basic tools that we use in the field all the time to keep us away from the process of questioning and reverting, right? A journal is a fantastic tool, very simple tool to use. You keep a daily log or a morning log and an evening log. You keep some kind of journal to remind yourself of what is relevant in that moment. So then when something happens on a Tuesday, you can open your journal and go back to last Tuesday and see the journal entries and start to see what is the predominance of information. Without the journal, we forget. Our short-term memory only lasts for between 7 and 14 seconds.
Whoa!
It's super short-term. And in that short-term 7 to 14 seconds, our brain is deciding whether or not to move something from short-term memory into long-term memory. But long-term memory still only lasts about 72 hours. Then there's different categories, different types of long-term memory that your long-term memory will shift into to make permanent memories or make academic memories or make skilled behavior memories, right? So when it comes to behaviors of people, if we don't value it in the first 7 to 14 seconds, we won't even remember it. If we do value it because we think it's suspicious or we think it's dishonest, we'll hold on to it for maybe the next 48 hours. But after 48 hours, we let it go. If we don't do something else to make it permanent. So if you want to look back over the last 7 days of your relationship, a journal is a fantastic tool. A voice memo, a diary. These are all simple tools that we can use, right? I've even met field officers who just kept a jar. So 2 jars and marbles. And all they would do is they would put a marble into the good jar when they saw good behavior and a marble into the bad jar when they saw bad behavior. And over time, you just see like, oh, there's a predominance of bad behavior. And even though you don't know the specific examples, you get the gut feeling that you need to make the decision that you know is in your best interest.
I've been watching these videos on avoidant attachment, and one of the things that she really reiterates in a lot of her videos is just that even just within that specific issue, people have lost the playfulness. They've become so rigid and so afraid from obviously a lot of trauma that they avoid almost as a sort of OCD reaction where like intimacy and new things are a type of stimuli that they've developed an avoidance to. And I see that sort of like trauma-based rigidity and a lot of other things too. And I feel like this is kind of an example of that as well, where there's just no playfulness. It's just very much like automatically assuming that something bad's going to happen, automatically assuming that we're a piece of shit. The curiosity to explore ourselves and the confidence enough to be like, okay, yes, this is not great, but like nothing bad has happened yet, regrounding yourself and then allowing yourself to actually feel curious and the desire to explore your own mind. That's been lost on a lot of people, you know, and I get why. But I was just really trying to encourage her, like, don't forget that you are allowed to go there. It doesn't have to just be this question of, why am I a piece of shit? Which is what a lot of our minds do. It's just, that's the automatic only question that your mind gives you as a question to ask. And there's actually a lot more questions that you can ask. And so just like I just touched on attachment styles, that was the second thing that I tried to remind her of, which she and I had discussed before, was attachment styles. I tried to remind her that, you know, I am a fearful avoidant attachment, and she's an anxious attachment, and her partner is also avoidant attachment, dismissive avoidant. And so the main thing I was trying to touch on with bringing up attachment styles with her is that from the videos that I've watched, just talking about what it's like for more secure attachment styles and how they feel different emotions, there's this sort of myth. I think stable people, whatever that even means, they can get put on a pedestal sometimes and almost romanticized in this very unrealistic way within the like YouTube therapy community and like social media therapy communities, where, you know, this sort of like demigod is created of this person who just like doesn't feel the emotions that we feel, and that's why they're stable and that's why they're secure, because like the problem with us is that we feel all of these things and we need to work on just not feeling the things. But if you really assess that trope, because I do think it's a trope, the like perfect stable person trope, I really challenge you that that's the cool girl slipping her way in again. Just that trope shows up in such subtle ways all the time. But anytime I hear about a woman or a person that doesn't feel anything, I think about the cool girl and the cool boy trope every single time. And like I've talked about in my other videos, I really think that the cool boy and the cool girl tropes are sociopaths. That people have fallen for this idea where you need to essentially try to imitate a sociopath or a psychopath in terms of being reckless and impulsive and wild and not looking for commitment and not looking for attachment and not feeling anything. Like, what does that sound like? You know, reckless as hell, not looking for anything stable. Come on. Substance abuse getting over romanticized, just like all of it. It's just like psychopaths to a T. And so when I hear about that like perfect stable person and how they don't feel anything, my spidey senses immediately go off and I go, sounds like one of the cool tropes. That's just me. And these videos on actual secure attachment really have affirmed that for me, because one thing that is a common theme in these videos is just the reiteration that people need to remember that a stable, secure person feels many of the emotions that we feel. The only difference is what they do with those emotions. It's not that they don't feel them, they do feel them. And there's a really helpful video that I found recently that I'll link down below on how a secure attachment style person processes anxiety and some of the more difficult emotions when their avoidant partner might be pulling away and withdrawing. And even though that's about a very specific type of situation, I really liked how he verbalized how a secure attachment style person rewards themselves, gives themselves rewards when they're feeling difficult emotions. And that was very important for me to hear and to think about, because as I think many of us know, when we're addicted to abusive people and addicted to dysfunctional relationships, we don't know how to reward ourselves, and we very quickly lose the ability to regulate ourselves as well. And we look to the other person many times to be that reward and to be that regulation center. And so to hear about how a secure attachment style person gives themselves rewards, and how that reward system enables them and rewards them enough to continue in the secure attachment style behavior, was very helpful. And so that was just kind of what I was trying to touch on with my friend, was just reminding her that she, once again, from a different angle and from a different perspective, once again, she's not a piece of shit for feeling what she's feeling. It's what she does with it. It's asking, why am I feeling this? And what am I going to do with what I'm feeling? Because she's saying she doesn't want to act on it. She's saying that she wants to be committed to her partner. Okay, if that's the case, then you have lots of options. It might feel like you don't. It might feel like this whole thing is about to take over your mind and suck you under, because that's what it has done to many of us in the past. But the past does not have to define the present or the future. There are always opportunities to rewire our own mind. Another way that they articulated the difference between insecure attachment styles and secure attachment styles in another video that I found is that one thing that insecure attachment style people do is they identify with the emotion as a core part of who they are. If they're feeling anxious, they tell themselves it means that they are an anxious person. You know, if now that she's having these thoughts, she's telling herself that it means that she is a cheater already, even though nothing's happened. Like, we very much absorb these things as core parts of our identity, which really is very self-abusive when you think about it. Like, that's, I think, a core theme for many of my past relationships, where the other person would encourage me to do this, to go, oh, as a part of shaming me and shaming my feelings. And I think I absorbed that mentality, and then I just continued to do it to myself, which makes sense. But that video really called out that behavior and was like, you don't have to identify with these emotions and act like they're a core shameful part of you, almost like a core issue, just because you're feeling them. A huge theme in my conversation with her was just about slowing down. Yes, you had an emotion. Yes, you had a thought. Does that mean that you need to figure out and have an answer for that literally right now, 5 minutes later after you felt the thing or thought the thing? No. Does that mean you have to figure it out alone? No. That's why it's important to have trusted friends that you can reach out to, accountability partners, whatever you want to call them, whoever you turn to. That's why it's important to have those people. You don't have to figure it out alone. Like, her turning to me helped give her a new perspective and a new way of thinking about it that she would not have had if she'd left it strictly to just herself. And eventually, after you've practiced these tools and these skills enough, you can do it by yourself. But I think when you're first learning them, you kind of need the gentle reminders, and you need to talk it out with people for a while, and that's okay. Just like I talked about in one of my other videos, you know, about like how these things leave us handicapped long term. You know, if you've been in a car accident and something gets damaged and then you have to go to physical therapy for a while, it's normal. It's okay. Something's been damaged and it takes time to repair it. I forgot to record the outro part of my video. So here is me for 5 seconds just to say thanks for watching as always, and God bless. I hope maybe this helps someone.
Not afraid to love you. I am not afraid. And sugar, honey pie, ain't gonna hurt you or let you down. Oh, I know I got to be stronger. Oh, little girl, I will never do you wrong. be better for having you by my side. There's one less thing you can do for me. Just before you go, look into my eyes and see this love, so that you'll always know. And darling, sugar pie ain't gonna hurt you or let you down. And darling, I am unafraid to, not afraid to love you. I am not afraid. Oh, I know I got to be stronger. Oh, little girl, I will never do you wrong. So, darling, just tell me you need me, and I will be better for having you by my side. And sugar, I am not afraid to, not afraid to love you. I am not afraid. I am not afraid.